which Today we're going to talk about which loans should be approved and why. This graph shows which zip codes have higher defaults in California. We color coded them based on the different zips, and then you can see the size of the circle means that they have more defaults than the smaller circles. So here, for example, San Luis Obispo has had 4 defaults, whereas Heritage or Paso Robles has only had 1 default. And as we get farther in here, you can see even more that there's plenty of other zip codes, cities that have different amount of defaults. Most codes that have higher defaults are in rural areas, so those that are in urban areas tend to have less defaults, 18 compared to the 616 defaults that are in rural areas. This alone isn't enough data on its own, so let's dive into what else we should use to make decisions. If the loans are backed by real estate, then they're less likely to default. So you can see those backed by real estate, 26 did not default, or those not backed by real estate defaulted 26, did not default 26 times, where those that are not backed by real estate defaulted 660 times. Using that information, we can infer that those loans in urban areas are more likely to have real estate backing them, or that the real estate is worth more so that it can be put up to satisfy the loan should it need to be. So here we show that new businesses are less likely to default than existing businesses. Again, this is a pretty wide disparity, not as wide a disparity as we had for urban, rural, and real estate, but still pretty wide. This is an interesting graph that shows that larger companies with 100 or more employees default on their loans less than those that are smaller. 685 of the 686 businesses that defaulted had 100 fewer employees. So you can see here 685 defaults in this bin, whereas you had 1 default across the other 5 bins here. Another thing that's interesting about this is it just shows that, SBA government loans are also going to be for those smaller companies most of the time. You have more SBA loans or more majority of SBA loans in the smaller companies than you do the larger companies. It still holds true over the course of the rest, but as a ratio, you can see that SBA loans cover a huge majority of the total loans given for those smaller companies, and those also happen to be the ones that are defaulted on more. In conclusion, the ideal loan is a new large company with more than 100 employees in an urban area that has the real estate to back their loan. And this should be rolled out in an agile approach in order to be able to make these decisions on a case-by-case basis. Obviously, those parameters are going to be super hard to find, although, less likely to be defaulted on. We do want to still give loans to others that might fall into the opposite of these categories, because they still have a chance of paying off. The only thing is, would you rather have real estate behind it, or would you rather it be a newer company? So these two things, are part of the whole story for it, but ideally, we don't want to exclude everybody from these groups just because they don't fit or check all the boxes. We would still like to give loans to other companies that happen to be in these different fields.